Good morning, everyone. My name is Sydney Goodfellow, and I'm the director of the Digital Learning Lab here at the Digital Supercluster. I'm really pleased and excited to welcome you to this morning's session, our Talent and Workforce Development Partner Information Session. Before we get started, we respectfully acknowledge that in Canada, we live, work, and learn on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral land of Indigenous peoples. As myself and much of the Supercluster team are based in Vancouver, British Columbia, we are gathered here on the traditional ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And we encourage you to take a moment and acknowledge and let us know in the chat the traditional territory that you are joining us from. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, as I'm sure you just heard. We will be distributing a recording to registrants after the presentation. If you do have questions at any point, please do just type them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them at the end. And if we're unable to get to them today, then we can have a follow-up as well. And with that, we will get started. So with today's session, the agenda for today, this call for partners is specific to training providers. Or this session is specific to the training providers. So today we're going to go through an overview. So we're going to talk about the call for partners, what brings us here today, who we are as an organization and as the Digital Learning Lab, and some collective outcomes that we've accomplished with our existing partnerships. Then we're going to move into partnerships in general, opportunities that we see in talent, how we're assembling teams and the roles that people can take within those. And then we're going to talk a bit training specific. So we are going to be doing 2 information sessions, as you probably saw in the email. This first one is going to be specific to training providers. So with both sessions, the beginnings will be the same. So if you're interested in joining both, the first half will be the same between the 2 sessions. Then we'll talk specifically about training providers. And in the next one, we'll talk specifically about platform partners or educational technology organizations. Then we'll get in a little bit into working together and how that can look. And then we will take questions and have a bit of a discussion. So starting it looks like the chat's disabled there. So we'll get that fixed for you. Starting with an overview. So the call for partners was a new thing for us. You may have worked with us here at the Supercluster before through a call for proposals. And so for the call for partners, what we're really looking to do is build strategic partnerships in talent development. We've seen incredible outcomes from our existing partners and projects. And the more we work in this space, as I'm sure you as well have this experience, the more we see the incredible breadth and volume of opportunities within talent. We are very focused on digital, but as we look at the transition to a clean economy, the changes that are happening in healthcare, we see rapid skilling and skill development as being major priorities for the long term. And we see such a huge opportunity here that we're really looking at building, like I said, more strategic partnerships, not just individual projects. So that's really the thinking behind the call for partners. And what we're going to get into today isn't going to be the super specifics of here's exactly what will happen. This is really an introduction to this style of partnership that we're looking at building. So who we are as an organization. Sorry, technical difficulties, a bit of a lag, bit of a spoiler alert about what's coming next. As we're getting back to the right slide. So really who we are as an organization, the Digital Learning Lab is the Digital Supercluster's national platform for talent and workforce development. So talent and workforce development is a strategic priority of the Digital Supercluster, where we're focusing on collaborative innovation, research and development, and IP creation here within Canada with an emphasis on digital. Talent and workforce development is very critical to that mission, and it's a major strategic priority for us here. We work in talent and workforce development across 3 main themes. Our pathways to digital jobs, which is really what we're looking at with this call for partners, is specific to that, although there may be relevance in the other pillars as well. So in pathways to digital jobs, we're looking to create accessible opportunities for workers to develop the skills they need quickly and affordably. In leading digital change, we're looking at what is the skill set and the mindset that an organization needs to succeed, to sustain change, and to develop world-leading innovations. And then within the growing connected communities pillar, this is really looking at community-led initiatives that enable people to develop place-based models of economic development. So looking at working beyond urban centers, working in rural and remote areas, working within Indigenous communities, and really looking at people-oriented community development. So together with our partners, we've done some pretty awesome things in the last couple of years. And so just a quick snapshot of what that looks like. We've invested about $12.7 million, which is leveraged to about 40 million of staged project investments across 19 talent-focused projects, which is working out to roughly 6,500 digital skilling and leadership learning and development placements. And so when we say learning and development placements, we mean training with line of sight to jobs. So that could be connection directly into a job. It could be on-the-job training. It could be co-op and work integrated learning. But really, all the training that we're looking to do is leading to employment. We're working across competencies like artificial intelligence and data science, upskilling for SMEs, digital transformation, entrepreneurship, quantum computing. There's a wide range of skills and competencies that we're working within, all with an emphasis on digital. We've got a pan-Canadian presence in urban centers across the country, as well as some regional and remote areas as well. We take an emphasis on Indigenous-driven projects and promoting connectivity and training in remote areas. And as well, we've got, through these existing projects, we're engaging with more than 130 partners across Canada. So it's already a pretty big network, and we're really looking at growing that. Together with our partners, we are changing the way workforce development happens in Canada, and that's really what we're here to do and what we're here to talk about. So that happens in three main ways. We're training and placing people, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're growing companies and communities, and we're enabling Canada's training ecosystem. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is you as the partners who responded to this call, and many of you have worked with us before or are familiar with the work that we're doing. Today, what we're really here to talk about is how can we support you as organizations to support this ecosystem and to grow these two other goals. And when we talk about the skilling ecosystem, we're really referring to what we call our rapid skilling system, which is kind of across 5 key pillars. So looking at real-time forecasting, so getting a real-time or kind of by the day understanding of what's actually happening within workforce development. So rather than doing some longer-term forecasting, really understanding what does industry need right now. And that has a lot to do with data gathering, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the tools in the EdTech session in August. For competency frameworks, we're really looking at personalization and personalized learning, the movement of skills between one industry and another, how that movement happens, what skills are relevant between jobs and industries, and really looking at that. Training delivery, that's the kind of bread and butter, and that's really what we're talking about today. Credential designation, that's looking at portability and how we validate and standardize that. And then, of course, everything leads to placement in jobs, like I said. So that's just a super quick overview. We kept it light because we know a lot of you are familiar with our work already, but if you did want to dive a bit deeper into what we do as an organization, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to do a deeper dive. Just didn't want to spend too much time on that, since for many of you it's a refresher. So what we really want to talk about today is our approach to partnerships, because that's the kind of key piece that's going to be driving our impact moving forward at the Digital Learning Lab. So our vision really is around creating a clean, healthy, creative, and digital Canada. So with an approach, with a focus on workforce development, it's really how can we ensure that people, communities have the skills and the opportunities that are necessary, people, companies, and communities to thrive in tomorrow and today's economy as it transitions to clean and digital. And our approach there is to reduce the cost and time required to get someone job ready in the digital economy, as well as growing Canada's world-leading skilling ecosystem. And like I said, that's really what we're talking about today. We do it through our program platform, which is the Digital Learning Lab, in 3 key kind of I'll call them steps, but they're not necessarily that linear. So we identify opportunities. We identify clear, critical, and demand-driven opportunities. And by demand-driven, we mean like we are always kind of driving home this need for the training to connect to jobs. Then we assemble and support a strong team of partners to work on that opportunity. And then we share what we learn. And this is where that platform piece comes in, where we're really combining and catalyzing resources between and among partners. And I'll emphasize here that for us, this isn't about growing our organization. This is about growing the ecosystem. Like I said, this is about supporting organizations like yours. And so that's really the key piece here is that's what we're trying to build. So I mentioned at the start that we see an incredible number of opportunities within the talent space, some huge challenges that need to be overcome, as well as some big changes that are coming and that are accelerating. We talk about that a lot, that change is accelerating and we need a system that can really keep up with that. And talent through those changes continues to be a major strategic priority, and demand for skilled and diverse workers is an ever-present challenge. There are so many opportunities for growth, innovation, and leadership in learning and development in Canada, and we really want to support Canada being kind of the world leaders in this space. So we have some opportunities that we've identified, opportunities that partners can identify, relevant proposals and RFPs, and domestic and global expansions. And we'll get into these a little bit, but really what we're looking at here is we know that the collection of organizations on this call alone is doing some truly incredible work in this space, and that there are things happening in the ecosystem that we are not aware of. We want to use our position as a catalyzing position. We're not trying to do this work by ourselves. So we're aware of some opportunities and challenges. We know that you're aware of some opportunities and challenges as well, looking at things like Budget 2022. There's such a range of priorities that all are going to require significant efforts in skilling and workforce development. So are there opportunities that we can go after together? And then there are some things that our partners and our network and community are working on in one industry or region that could be scaled within Canada between other regions or industries. And as well, there are some really innovative and successful concepts that could be scaled globally as well. So is there an opportunity for us to work together on growing that impact around the world? So once we've identified an opportunity, that kind of step 2 is really assembling a team around that opportunity, or supporting an existing team. And so you may recall from the call for partners that we identified the 3 main roles as lead, specialist, and industry. Typically, we would see training providers as the leads. That doesn't have to be the case. Any type of organization can be the lead, but really what we're looking for there is organizations that are doing innovative things, that can be delivery partners, and that have the capacity and the passion, the commitment, and the interest in the talent and workforce development space to manage projects and partners. Within the specialist category, this is really filling out the delivery of the project itself with expertise in working with specific demographic groups or in specific regions or communities, identifying talent pools, creating data or pulling data together rather, creating tools, all of the specific pieces that go into creating a successful project. And then third, we have industry partners, and industry partners can play a number of different roles, but here what we're referring to is that kind of demand for the skills that are being trained in the other 2. So ensuring that industry is represented and that what we're creating is demand driven. So often industry will identify the challenge and then the other 2 will mobilize around them. So these are kind of when we're assembling a team, this is what we're really thinking about. And there isn't a magic number or a magic kind of system. It's really about the people and the cohesion between those people and the complementary skills. In terms of our principles of how we work with partners, there are kind of 4 key areas that I'll just touch on briefly. And you can see at the bottom that all 3 partner categories really contribute to these principles in important ways. So I'll start with the second one. Innovation is key to all that we do at the Supercluster, of course. we want to be making impactful changes to the way that workforce development and learning and development happens in Canada. And so what we're doing is really investing in projects and supporting partners and teams to create these kinds of step changes and making making training faster and more affordable for people and more effective. At the same time that we're doing those kinds of innovations and our partners are doing that work, we're also training people. And this is really the kind of key piece. And we're calling it production here, but really what we mean is we're training and placing as many people as we can with relevant skills that lead to good, well-paying jobs. We're making a regular and meaningful impact while we are innovating. It's kind of both and. The third piece is kind of this contribution to the platform itself. So what are we learning? How are we sharing resources? How are things fitting together so that learners can move through platforms or through pathways rather? How can we benefit from the work that others are doing? And how can we grow Canada's skilling ecosystem as a whole? And accessibility is core to everything that we do. Working with underrepresented groups is a part of every project that we work across, and with a specific emphasis on Indigenous peoples and supporting reconciliation and mobilizing investment into Indigenous-led projects. As well, we're supporting a just transition and addressing systemic barriers to ensure people have access to essential skills, training, and work. So these are kind of the principles of what we're working across and thinking about as we're assembling teams. So now to talk about what's specific for training providers, we see work with training providers happening in 3 key areas, and this is going to change and it's going to grow. That's why we're having this conversation. We want to know what else we can do, and we'll talk about that. We'll raise that question. But part of growing the skilling ecosystem means enabling training providers. As I mentioned, in the rapid skilling system and the ecosystem, training providers really are the bread and butter of that. So what we're hearing often, and the way that we're looking to approach collective challenges, we often hear that things like content creation is costly and time consuming, and it needs to be constantly updated. Access to new customers, access to resources, industry validation and relevance, connecting directly into industry partners, tracking learner outcomes and the efficacy and how to improve that, both in the short term and the long term. These are just some challenges that we hear from training providers again and again. And so is there a way that we can help navigate these challenges together, that we can learn from each other, that we can kind of raise the tide across the board? For stacking and validating, we see an opportunity to work together to create relevancies between competencies and credentials and form learning pathways. So in silos, training opportunities might not necessarily fit together in an intuitive way for learners. If they get a credential here, what do I need next in order to land this next role? How can we stack and validate and standardize across partners in a way that makes it easier and more intuitive for learners? And then collectively, how can we expand impact? Can we grow and scale what works? Talking about globalization and even within Canada, scaling, accessing new learners, employers, customers, leveraging shared resources, and finding and going after new opportunities together. And we'll talk about that as well. But this is, like I said, this is the beginning of the way that we see working together looking. And you'll note that this is slightly different than the way we would typically work, where we would open a call for proposals and partners or leads would submit a concept. With this, we see the opportunity to grow together. So with that in mind, how will we work together? There are 3 main approaches that I will talk about that kind of are in descending order of certainty, if you will. So for open calls, this is our typical structure. This is when project teams come together with a concept in a proposal and we review them. And we'll be opening some calls this fall, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. More information is to come on that, but part of being part of this partner network and through this call for partners is that you'll be the first to know when we do open those calls and we can work together on shaping something. For the next, and so that's existing funding that we have. And so that's where that certainty comes in. For the collaborative proposals, this is where we see there are tons of calls for proposals and RFPs, and as they come available, can we go after them together? Some of you on this call may have done that with us in the past, and you may know of opportunities that we aren't aware of, and can we work together on this? And this isn't for us to be a competitor within the ecosystem. This is really for us to fill gaps and support the great work that's already happening with our partners. For open ideation, this is an ongoing piece. So there may not be funding that we know of or funding that we have, but is there a way that we can mobilize something together? If there's a big challenge that you see or a big opportunity, could we kind of come together and see what we could do? And so this is kind of an ongoing thing. There isn't a framework for this or a system. This has really come to us with a big challenge, whether you're an industry partner having trouble filling specific competencies or skill sets, or a partner, a provider facing one of those specific challenges that we talked about, or with an opportunity, we can see what we can do together. So some of the current identified opportunities that we have, and these are pretty vague at this stage because many of them are still in the works and shaping. This is kind of a sneak peek, if you will. And they are kind of subject to change, and we'll have this conversation ongoing, but moving forward and starting in the fall, we will be looking for specific partners with expertise and training for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science, as well as sector-specific digital skills, as well as digital literacy, as well as the global innovation clusters, the phase 2 and the work that we'll be doing there. And we'll have ongoing and continuous pipeline development. So I mentioned that kind of third piece of what other opportunities are there. There will be more than just this, and we will share those with you as they go. And we're sharing this really not to say like, stay tuned for these things on these dates, but to say that there is a ton of stuff that's going to be coming down the pike in the next few months and year or so. And so we're really excited to be collaborating with this group and mobilizing this group around some of these opportunities, and happy to talk more about that. So in terms of what's next, really what we're looking for here is what else? Our objective is to help you as organizations that are working in the skilling space, that are leaders in talent and workforce development. How can we help you grow? So we identified some things that we think we can do and that we can do together. But if there are other things, and even if you don't want to put them in the chat and you just want to have a follow-up conversation, we are looking at that phase 2 of the global innovation clusters, like I mentioned. What are some things that we can be doing together that are specific to the building of pathways to digital jobs? Really excited to be talking to all of you today about this. I think there's going to be some pretty amazing things. So with that, I'm going to open the floor to questions, and happy to, like I said, take them now or take them one-on-one later. But yeah, that's where I'll stop and move on to questions. So I see one in the chat there from Peter Payne. What is SWSP? So SWSP is the Sectoral Workforce Solutions Program, which is through ESDC, which we are in the process of contracting right now. So I won't share too much in terms of the details about what that looks like, but that is an opportunity to create some of the stuff that we were talking about today. So pathways to digital jobs, supporting the kind of training provider component to the rapid skilling ecosystem. And we will be doing some kind of open call or call for proposals that is specifically related to that. But if you want to look up the ESDC Sectoral Workforce Solutions Program, please feel free to do so, and happy to have a follow-up conversation with you on that as well. Thanks for your question. Any other questions? Do we have any post-secondaries on the call? I assume so. There were a number of post-secondaries that came through the call for partners. Annika would be able to have that information in terms of who the participants are. But yes, post-secondaries, I can say generally, we would consider post-secondaries within the category of training providers. And certainly we do lots of really fantastic work with post-secondaries and So whether, I'm not sure if you are from a post-secondary or if others on the call are, but absolutely, we do a lot of work with post-secondaries. I don't know if that answers your question. So I've got a question here from Kareem. Can you please elaborate on what you have internally and what partner skills you are looking for? So I assume what you mean by that is kind of what skills we have as the supercluster to bring to a project versus what we're looking at working with partners on. And let me know if that's not the intention of the question, but that's the way I'm interpreting that. So internally, our skills are on the catalyzing and the growing and the pulling together. We're not delivery partners ourselves. So that's what we're looking for partner skills on. So partner skills, like I mentioned, those kinds of 3 areas of lead, specialist, and industry, those are the areas that we're looking for partner skills on. And in terms of the specifics of each of those, it's going to depend on what the project is building. So if you were building a project in AI training, we would look for partners that have expertise and specialty within artificial intelligence. And so it's going to kind of depend on the theme and the goal of each project. But typically we're looking for expertise in those 3 areas. The lead, so someone who has the capacity to lead the project, the specialization, so the unique skills that are required to make that specific project successful, and then the industry demand and the industry partnership on the other side of that. For the private for-profit training centers, absolutely. We don't really specialize or kind of identify the type of training provider that we would want to work with. For-profit or private training providers, absolutely. Nonprofit, absolutely. The goal here, the consistent factor here is really that you are doing and delivering effective training and that you're willing to collaborate. So that's the piece there. It's for-profit and not-for-profit is less critical. And as a supercluster, one of our main goals is to, as the supercluster, as an innovation organization, we're catalyzing industry investment into research and development. And that, that we typically would talk about that in technology development. But for the Digital Learning Lab, we're talking about that in learning and development and catalyzing industry investment. So we do look to see that industry buy-in. But as far as training providers go, it's less relevant. From Chapman, are there already employers as partners who are interested in being part of the outcome of these training programs? So we often see leads pull the industry partners in. As a supercluster, we also have a network of 1,100 members across Canada, many of whom are industry. So we have a kind of partner network that we can leverage and we can support with that. And that could also be something that the specialist could bring in. For example, a specialist within a project could be, or a lead could be an industry association, for example, that works with a number of industry partners, or an economic development agency within a specific region that has a number of small businesses, for example. So there's a couple of creative ways that that industry partners can get involved. But again, we really look to that industry being there from the jump. And then in terms of who are interested in being part of the outcome of these training programs, yes, absolutely. We do have ongoing industry demand from our existing partners for programs like these. Great questions, everyone. Keep them coming. And if you'd like me to elaborate on anything else specifically, please do let me know. Okay, question from Valeria. Would you be in favor of supporting pilot approaches to training, i.e. testing new models and iterating in the shorter term and then working towards scaling in the longer term? Absolutely. That's something that we have done in the past. And I would say we would be willing to do again. I can't speak to the specific kind of envelopes and sizes in the open calls that I referred to, but we can take a number of different approaches there. We could have a discussion about what you're thinking and how we could go that third option and try and mobilize some investment around it, or we can see what exists and fits within the existing other two, which is the funding that we have and then the proposals and the RFPs that we can go for. So it would depend basically on the type of project that you're looking to build, but certainly feasibility studies, pilots, these are all things that we're keen on supporting. Where can we get the training demand data? So this is a great question and kind of a two-part answer. One is that we're looking to, and if you join for the EdTech call, which is happening in August, we're going to be talking to some of the partners that submitted to the call for partners that specialize in that kind of work, in data around demand, real-time labor market analytics, some of that kind of intelligence side of things. So we're really looking at one of the challenges that we can help training providers overcome is understanding of where the industry demand is, where the content should be going or can be going, what industry is looking for as a whole, and what kind of regions or areas are looking for as a whole. So just writ large, that's something we don't have and want to have. So that's kind of part one. The way that we've done it typically in existing projects is some projects pull those partners in themselves. So I'll give an example of a project in our current portfolio that BC Tech Association is leading. And that one has worked with SkyHive, which is an organization that does real-time labor market analytics. They do an assessment at the start of each year of the project to really get a sense of what that year will look like. And then they create training around what the outcome of that study is. So there's kind of project-specific approaches that we partners can take. And then there's the ecosystem as a whole. How can we build something that all partners can get access to? So that's the way that I would answer that. And if you're interested in learning more, please join for the call in August.
There's some questions just in the other chats that have been popping up.
Where, I don't know where the other chat is.
At the bottom, there's the Q&A, and then right beside it, there's the chat bubble. I can also read them out for you if that would help.
If you could read them out, Annika, that would be great.
Does the development of technology skills for owners of small businesses fit into your mission?
Great question. So digital adoption is not something that we have done a lot on in the past. However, I did mention that essential skills is something that we'll be looking at in the future in digital literacy. So in that case, yes. So historically, we haven't done anything in digital adoption and kind of the small business transformation to digital. But in the future, there will be an opportunity for that, yes. And what that looks like is TBD. If you have specific concepts, please do reach out.
The next question from Claire, in its catalyzing role, will the supercluster be bringing together organizations that could collaborate on a proposal, or will it be up to the lead organization to do the legwork?
That's another great question. It's going to depend. So the way that it's happened in the past is if you are the lead partner with the concept, then you would bring the partners together and we'll support if we can. But we are a small organization, and so I don't want to kind of overpromise and say, yeah, we'll pull everyone together. But we will do what we can to do so. And where we are aware of partners that would benefit or could contribute, we will absolutely make those introductions. And then it's up to the lead to build those relationships. In other cases, for example, with RFPs and collaborative proposal development, we have pulled partners together around concepts and said, and done some partner development there and connected partners with each other. So it really depends. I'm hesitant to kind of give a concrete answer there because, like I said, I don't want to say, yep, we'll create the teams. It's really going to be project by project. But where possible, we would look to the leads to pull relevant partners together. And what we would do is just, especially with, for example, an open call. So if it's a call for proposals that we are running, the lead would pull those partners together. And if there's specific gaps or opportunities that we see, we'll support with that. But we would look to the lead to create that.
And then from Jill, she's unclear on what would be the best way to contribute and collaborate as a provincial government employer.
Great question. So that is in some ways the role that comes to mind when you say employer would be industry, even though you're not industry in the typical sense, because you would represent employer demand. And so in that sense, that would be the way that we would look to work with the province as an employer. If you were looking to work as a specialist or as a lead, then we would take a different approach. But as an employer, what we would do is have a specific conversation with you to get a sense of what competencies are you looking for, what gaps within your workforce are you trying to fill, what kinds of learning and development resources do you have already, or would you be looking to build out, and kind of try and shape something there, because that would be that representation of demand.
Perfect. Thanks, Sid. From Jennifer, she says a lot of amazing work has gone into projects and our Canadian ecosystem so far. Do you have any plans to coordinate a place where we can share and learn what is going on in projects, a roundtable or something perhaps, to help the ideas on partnerships and the objective to grow?
Yes, great question, Jennifer. So when we talk loosely about platform development, that is the vision, essentially, is that this is a coming together place where people can share these resources, create standards, share what works, grow together. That's the kind of long-term vision. Until that's built, we're doing it on an ad hoc basis. So will there be some kind of coming together round table? If we did that, it would be specific to probably a smaller concept or opportunity, and then we would pull those partners together around that. So if you want to explore something like that, please let me know and we can see what we can do there. But in the meantime, it's really, like I said, it's very ad hoc, but and kind of initiative by initiative. But long-term, absolutely, we see this kind of platform. And again, this isn't a technology platform that we're referring to. This is kind of an opportunity platform, if you will, or a programmatic platform, where we pull together all these individual components, so that we have a place where we can come and have those kinds of discussions, have regular sessions like that, where we can learn from each other.
And then for the groups interested in being partners, how do we get introduced to one another?
So that's, again, kind of on an ad hoc basis. So right now it would be based on concept. So if there's a call for proposals, for example, that you're interested in getting involved with, then you would reach out. We would talk about what your expertise is, and we would see about connecting you and plugging you in where possible. We might also hold an info session around that specific call where partners can meet each other in real time. As well, you can see who's involved in the different existing projects and who our existing partners are, and connect with them directly or reach out for an introduction. And that would be that. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Again, as part of this platform develops and grows, we want to see an opportunity, like a marketplace of people being able to work with each other directly. But in the meantime, it's really kind of building it together. And so it would be initiative specific. So like I said, if there's a call, we'll have something around that. If there's an RFP or proposal opportunity, we would have something specific to that. And then if you had a specific concept that you wanted to explore with us, then we would approach that differently as well.
And then from Krim in the Q&A chat, how much would the supercluster be involved with standards development, especially on the credential side?
Yeah, so the way that we see that happening, again, is kind of as a pooling of resources. So is there an opportunity for us to pull together a standards council around specific competencies, for example, to validate that learning? We as the supercluster would not necessarily be the holders of that leadership, but the bringers togetherers of it, for example. So it would really be based on what that specific credential is. And this would be something that we would pilot together. So how would we standardize a specific credential? Let's try an approach together, essentially, that looks at borrowing from what existing industries or regions are doing that works, and then pulling the right people together to be able to validate that and test that.
I think those are all the questions from the chat so far.
Awesome. Okay, well, if any other roll in, I'll certainly address those. And if you had any that you wanted to share directly, please just reach out to me, and I will happily have a follow-up discussion. And thank you so much for joining and for sharing your thoughtful questions. I really, really appreciate it. I think the key takeaway for me here is, like I said, there's so much opportunity in the talent and workforce development space. We want to be a catalyzing partner. We want to support your organizations to grow together, and to help the workforce in Canada adapt to change and find good employment. And I think we can do that together. So looking forward to the kinds of opportunities that we have coming up. And if you are interested in joining for the next kind of tech specific or platform specific call that's happening in August, please do. Like I said, the first half or more will be, again, the same around the overview and the overall digital learning lab, and then we'll get specific to the tech side of things as well. So thank you so much again. I look forward to seeing you all and speaking with you all soon.